like to call the work session to order, May 23rd, 2011. And I said, look around, City Clerk, do I have to excuse her now at the regular meeting? Thank you. I said, look around. We all seem to be here. It's going to be here at the work session, so let's begin. And we're going to start out with the agenda item on update on the activities in progress related to the master plan for the Goodyear Operations Center. And Kim Bradford.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Kim Bradford. I'm an Executive Management Assistant here at the City. And presenting with me this evening, I have Kyle Swanson with Arrington Watkins Architects. Also in the audience, we have Mike Quinn and Tom Roth, also with Arrington Watkins. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you this evening to give you an update regarding the Goodyear Operations Center Master Plan and Phase 1 design progress. Tonight's presentation will provide you with a brief review of the project scope, give you an overview of activities that have occurred since Arrington was brought under contract, which will include an overview of the research, analysis, and findings necessary to begin our master planning process. Sorry about that. Review the draft space use analysis for the site, which includes areas where specific functions will be, and also the basis for the final master plan, which will be brought forward to you later this summer, and discuss the next steps related to the project. We welcome your feedback on the information presented, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. As a reminder, the project area is a 96-acre site of city-owned land on the west side of Estrella Parkway, just south of MC 85. This land is adjacent to the existing 157th Avenue Water Reclamation Facility and Public Works Administration Building, both of which will remain at this location. There are a couple of elements that currently are on the site that are within our master planning area, which include the BMX Park, which currently operates under a lease with the city, and Roscoe Dog Park, which includes parking and restrooms that have already been built at this location. The Phase 1 project was approved in the Fiscal Year 11 Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, at $5.6 million and is comprised of two main components. First, the build-out master plan for the site. This step is the critical first step of the project, which defines the general facility requirements for all the various functions that are going to be located out here at build-out, and Kyle's going to go over those with you in just a moment. And second, we have the Phase 1 construction, design and construction. The Phase 1 project consists of an approximately 3-acre Phase 1 Public Works operations yard, which will be a paved area that will have equipment and general storage areas, and is also going to be sited for the Phase 2 elements, which include a fueling station, wash racks, and a storage facility. Also, we have Phase 1 of the Telecom 911 Dispatch Center, which will be accompanied by the adjacent radio tower that will support the Regional Wireless Cooperative project that's currently underway. Finally, the needed infrastructure, which is the streets, water, sewer, and other utility lines to support Phase 1. While we will only build the infrastructure for Phase 1, it will be constructed and designed to support the ultimate site build-out. Following the approval of the capital project in this year's budget, in January, Council approved the first contract related to this project, which was the master plan and design contract with Arrington. As we kicked off the master planning process, there were two key foundational elements that had to be analyzed and decided. These elements would lay the foundation for the entire master plan. The first was to define the time frame that the master plan will encompass. This is important as it drives decision points such as the facilities necessary that we anticipate will be needed to support services provided from this site. At the outset of this process, the master planning timeframe was established at 25 years. This is a standard benchmark timeframe used in master planning and also ties in with the future growth pattern of the city, which will expand further to the south and will necessitate support services in that area of the city. Once the time frame was established, we had to complete due diligence to establish the other key element for the master plan, which is our average growth rate projected during this 25-year time frame. This aspect is critical as the staff and equipment needs are derived from the population growth. These projections then define the space that's required, like building square footages and parking and storage needs. In order to establish the growth projection rate, Arrington Watkins compiled information from various sources and analyzed trends. In addition, we consulted with our Community Development Department, who compiles population statistics and growth projections in conjunction with the Maricopa Association of Governments. Based on these areas of review, it was determined that a reasonable average growth rate to use is 5%. It's understood that there will be periods of both rapid growth and development declines throughout the 25-year period, but that 5% is a good average for that time frame. Now, Kyle Swanson will present you with an overview of the analysis that took place after we established these foundational elements and walk you through the space plan analysis that's been developed. Kyle?
Thank you, Kim. Madam Mayor and council members. Once the city growth was analyzed, we worked on an overall program to develop for the project. The operations centers, as we found out, was comprised primarily of two big groups, the public safety and public works, with a scattering of other departments. The public safety consisted of the police department, fire department. Public works consisted of public works, streets and traffic, and the other departments were parks and rec, procurement, engineering, and IT services. Each of these departments have their necessary divisions associated with them. As part of the analysis for this program, once it was complete, the part of the growth projections was to look at the on-site staff. As you can see from the following graphic, we took a look at milestones from the current staff to the 2020 projection to finally the 2033. Or 2035, excuse me.
That's right.
Right now, as you look, we have the police department starting at 130, growing to a 248 in 2020, ultimately to 421 by 2035. The fire department is moving from 19 today to 71 in 2020 by 131 in 2035. Ultimately, the site grows to an ultimate projection of over 854 people by the 2035. The next thing that we did is analyzed some of the operations which are not necessarily driven by population. We looked at vehicle growth by crews, sites, operations, and shifts. We looked at the growth and development of the spaces based on servicing of the vehicles with parks and recreations that had also a similar type of number. We looked at the number of staff based on the type of maintenance required and the number of parking types that are based on the vehicle needs, crews, and needed to service those items. As you can see, based on the chart that's in there, about the 2025 time period, we believe that most of the city's growth will happen south of the current position, which will lead to satellite offices or satellite operations facilities, and there will be a slight plateauing. Finally, the last analysis that we did on the program was to look at a comparison of the area requirements based on site components in relation to the building components. As you can see from the chart there, the site components greatly outweigh the building components that are going to be planned for this site. We broke that down into the public safety, public works, and all of the other departments. As you can see from the chart on the far left, the public safety comprises the largest building components, while public works occupies the largest site components. Finally, after the program was complete, we involved stakeholders that were adjacent landowners to the city. In preparation for the master planning, we conducted these stakeholder meetings to include the City of Phoenix's Aviation Department, the Arizona Department of Transportation, Sun MP, who is the property owner north and east of the property, the Ben Ross Corporation, which is the west property owner, as well as the Buckeye and Roosevelt irrigation districts. The Ellman Companies, who is the owner of King Ranch, has so far elected not to participate. We are also keeping in the loop through emails and correspondences the current farmer who leases the property, Tim Raynor, as well as the Estrella BMX Park. As part of these stakeholders meetings, we identified various items that we wanted them to address to us. Those items were concerns, adjacency issues, site access, road alignments, infrastructure, and potential impacts with any other considerations that they might have. As a result, the communication tower was one issue that came up. It was the height of the tower, the location as placement on the site, And Joe Husband from the Aviation Department basically said that we would need to go through an FAA process to make sure that the height would clear the airport runway. Another issue was the shooting range. The biggest issue was in regards to whether it is an outdoor shooting range, which would potentially have lead or water issues. Currently, it does not plan to be an outdoor shooting range. It is only to be an indoor shooting range. Another issue was the tailwater, maintaining all of the irrigations back into the Buckeye Canal. The location of the State Route 30, which was formerly the 801, was also a big concern of all stakeholders. Right now that we have had meetings with ADOT to address some of those concerns, and it is currently unfunded, and we have as much information and are working with that. Traffic signals, both at Rozier and at Maricopa 85, was also addressed. We are looking into how we signalize those two intersections. And then the alignment with new plats adjacent to us for the Sun MP development for the Rozier and the Broadway alignment were also concerns that came out of that meeting. Finally, we moved into analyzing the site for what we have to work within. And the first analysis that we did was the zoning uses. The entire site is currently zoned as a PFD district, which currently has a 30-foot setback on any adjacency to roads. Otherwise, there is no other setback. It has a height limit of 40 feet and a 10% landscape ratio. And of course, we have to follow all current building codes. The next analysis that we performed were environmental issues that will have impact on the design of the building. We took a look at the solar angles, prevailing winds, temperature and humidity, as well as views from and to the site. These will impact on how we take and look at the building's envelope and its orientation. Finally, we took a look at the airport impact on the site. As you can see from the following graphic, the airport flight path occupies a good portion of the site. We were able to obtain information on the 300-foot runway extension, as well as the lowering of the angle for the bottom floor of the flight approach. It was recommended to us by the City Aviation Department that no mission-critical functions should be included within the flight path. The current northwest portion of the site is the only portion that is outside of that flight path. The bottom elevation of that floor currently ranges from 116 feet to 157 feet above current grade. The next thing that we analyzed was looking at typical traffic patterns that were around the site as it exists now. We have the MC85, which is a major arterial, and currently is only targeted to have half-mile signal intersections. The Estrella potential entry and the signal at a new Rozier Street alignment was also analyzed. Right now, we have average daily traffic currently of about 1,600 vehicles on both MC85 and Estrella Parkway, which is anticipated to grow to about 60,000 by 2035. All of the site is expected to have both light and heavy-duty access, as well as shared functions by off-site users. Eventually, the site will be bifurcated by the State Route 30, which will split the site into two. And so site connectivity was an important aspect for us to address. Public access to the parks that are potentially planned to be at this site are also something that we are looking closely into. Now I would like to present basically and give you an overview of our space use analysis. We've conducted approximately about 5 different studies in which we took a look at where the different components of the site could be placed on the site, the results of which you are seeing here. The program area is used to address the logical placement on the site, and it does not look at the actual functions or the design. The graphics that you see presented for you right now are just general placeholders just to give us an idea of the space and comparisons. Based on the site analysis, it's a logical step to move forward into an actual master plan. We started by overlaying the critical site analysis impact, as you can see by the shaded blue. If I can highlight this with the mouse, the large blue that is projecting over is the flight of the airport runway. And then we have the State Route 30 here highlighted going across the site. The give you an idea of the existing zones that we have right now. We'll start with Zone A, which is currently the existing wastewater treatment plant. Zone B, which is just to the right of that, is where we're potentially looking at the public works portion of that. Public works will also extend slightly north of, which is we're terming as the new Rozier Street alignment, which is moving east and west here. Zone C is currently platted to be the dog and the train park activities, and are currently located parallel to Estrella Parkway to take advantages of public access. And finally, Zone D, which is currently planned to be the police and fire training activities, which we feel has the least amount of public input, and we located that more towards the center of the site. And lastly, the public safety portion, which is item E, comprises both of the police and the fire headquarters, as well as our 911 communications facility. Logically, after looking at the airport, we decided that having the public safety and the critical functions of the 911, emergency operations, and the traffic management happening outside of that flight path made those locations to the northwest the obvious choice. This is a larger exhibit showing you much more where we're trying to move with the critical areas of the site. The highest priority was to keep most of the uses out of the State Route 30's path, which is currently undefined. We were giving a maximum right-of-way that they would like to use in a conservative approach, but we have flexibility on where that alignment could place. And so we tried to keep functions that were like to haves based on meetings with the user groups and not necessarily have to haves. And so what you find is the occupy the land that's currently within the State Route 30 is an expansion of the public safety's driver's training track, as well as some of the parking activities, which we feel that if the State Route 30 was developed, parking could be folded up into a second-story parking type structure, and some of the components of the driver's training track could actually be eliminated from the program. As we look forward and address some of the Phase 1 concerns, right now we are taking a look at trying to maintain access in the future along the 159th Avenue alignment. We potentially see that because of the MC85 having a half-street signalized, we think that the 159th alignment will be our primary north to south across the site main circulation. As we move forward to develop the Phase 1, though, we are right now looking at probably developing 157th Avenue as it has less impact on our infrastructure needs at the moment. 911 facility, which is part of Phase 1, is going to be located somewhere off of the 157th alignment on the north half of the site, with the public works portion for their laydown yards and fueling and wash bays are potentially looking to be adjacent to the current wastewater facility. We are also actively developing the Rozier Street alignment and signalizing that on the Estrella Parkway. It has been identified that minimizing the current Rozier, which is south of the dog park, is a high priority for the city. Alternatively, we have also been made aware currently of a potential piece of land that the city has owned and has no plans at the current time to see if there's potential use, which is we are terming as the P1 alternative location, which some of public works functions may be located there, such as the storage feature or a central warehousing capabilities. One of the goals in this development is to make sure that we minimize the heavy-duty traffic as it goes along Rozier, and so we see that having most of the heavy-duty vehicles actually making a new connection along the 157th and the north portion of we'll develop a road just north of the current wastewater treatment plant, and having ingress and egress from the site happening in there, and only having light-duty vehicles going across the current park activities out to Estrella Parkway. Our next steps and moving forward is we're going to basically having our internal team split into two teams. I will be moving forward in developing the Phase 1 911 call center and fueling, as I have Mike and Tom in our office will be moving forward into more of the master plan development. These master plan developments will be moving to identify actual circulation patterns, access, roads, intersections, signals, connectivities, sidewalks, the slight building configurations such as volumes, entrance locations, public and private crossovers, the relationships and how they interact, detailed space uses and functions versus what is specifically shared and what is unique to each independent department. And we will also do detailed adjacencies and functions, synergies, natural fits, and we'll be looking at how we integrate the landscaping and in the retention areas. We expect to be about 90% complete by the end of June. Right now it is our goal to be complete with schematic design at that same time period for Phase 1. Our goal is to be out for bid for the Phase 1 construction in the first part of November to December of this year, and to have construction start by January of 2012. Finally, we'll bring all of this together and we'll present a final acceptance of the master plan again to this City Council probably in late August. That concludes the space use analysis overview, and we'd be welcome to take your questions.
Start out with questions. Who has the first question? Councilman Souza?
Yeah. How much exposure do these buildings have to overflights from Phoenix International?
The exposure is highlighted in,
I see that. But, you're going across, you're showing me that you're going across.
Excuse me, one moment. We have a misplaced microphone here. Can we just get that up? People complained last week because we weren't online, and so let's make sure they hear us this week when everything is A-OK, okay? I'm going to put this over here.
In your illustration, you're showing the blue section, okay?
Correct.
And then the top section that defines
Just hold it up on that way.
the airport. What exposure does this property have to overflights from Phoenix International?
by overflights, do you mean flights that actually would land prior to the runway or after?
Takeoff and landing.
Yeah, there is a slight exposure to it, and that is something that we're looking into.
Well, shouldn't we have looked into this with Phoenix Goodyear before we got into all this stuff?
Yes, Councilmember Souza and Mayor, we are continually engaging the airport, both Joe Husband, the fixed base operator out here at the airport, and also the Phoenix Aviation Planning Department, who have received the analyses, the space use analysis, our planning and zoning division within the city looking at general plan restrictions to make sure that all planned uses within that blue zone, as you can see, there's encompasses most of the site, that there's no conflict with flights overpassing that area. So at this stage, the only identified concern or issue was to make sure that the critical function of the 911 and the tower were outside of that blue area, but all of the operations aspects that we've planned that fall within that blue area are appropriate. Did that answer your question?
And Phoenix Goodyear has given approval of this?
Correct, and
You have it in writing.
We don't have a written, what we do is we'll actually have a written approval through the FAA once we actually have the design of the tower and the 911, which will be in writing. And as Kyle stated, that'll be later in the summer once we have the design complete. But what we do have is continual engagement with both the fixed base operator and the downtown planning department to make sure as we move through the master plan process that they are documented in minutes, the conversation, our responses. So to that level, we do have in writing and continual correspondence with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilman, no. Anybody? Councilwoman Osborne?
I have a few questions. Actually, well, first one, I'll go ahead and tag on to Councilmember Sousa. Is there a noise issue being in this vicinity of the airport and the overflights, being that it will be 911 and a training facility? Will there be an issue of noise?
Noise is a concern of ours, and we do have it in our scope of work to actually do a acoustic study out there to find out exactly what that will entail. And we will probably address that through some of the architectural means by either hardening up some of the walls and or providing some types of glazing that can minimize that as much as possible. I don't know what the actual impact of it is at this moment, though.
Well, I can see that being very important. I mean, for an area of training and, most importantly, a 911 center, that you need to be able to not have that disturbance of noise. So I would think that would be very important. A couple other questions. You've mentioned that would be LEED certified. I'm assuming that this is an all right area. Anywhere in Arizona you think is all right for solar, but I would assume that because of the vicinity of the mountains and the way the sun would go with the mountains, this area is still okay for solar?
Yes.
Have you considered
we
that?
are actively looking at solar as part of our LEED strategy. We are also taking a look at a new concept with the LEED process where we are potentially going to maybe get a LEED certification as a campus-wide facility, which will help future projects down the line. That is still being researched into it with the USGBC Council to find out what the criteria is for that.
Okay. And, you know, my memory must be off because I could have sworn that the fueling station was part of the original.
Sure, you're talking in the microphone, Joanne. Pull it up closer.
I thought the original plan that we've been seeing or discussing in this last year included that fueling station, and now you're saying it's in phase 2. What happened?
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Osborne, just to clarify, what we have in the contract right now is the design, but the $5.6 million that was approved for this year's CIP did not include funding for construction of the fueling site. What you have been seeing as part of the fiscal year 12 budget process does include funding for construction of the fuel site, as well as the storage and the wash rack. So that, even though we're calling that phase 2, because of the separation of the funding, it will all be done at once.
So phase 2 is pretty quick then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And let's see. Oh, well, you know, I guess that kind of takes care of the other, let's see, we're in good. Yep, I think that was it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Campbell?
Thank you. I would like to have more conversation before the master plan is done on the train park
Okay.
and the location of where the dog park is, because I'm not convinced the dog park is compatible with children side by side. And so we need to have another conversation on that before you start doing the master plan of that, please.
Okay. We did have a meeting with some of the Centennial Committee when we were talking about some of the park activities and some of the coexistence of the two. At the time, we have been identified to maintain the dog park in some type of form similar to how it exists today. It could be moved in location, and as we did some of the studies, we were taking a look at where we could place those activities. It became very apparent that access to the parks was a big concern, and by putting it more central to the site, it became a harder program to access and made difficulties with the other programs. The only other public portion of the site, again, is along the Broadway alignment between 157th and 159th. Of course, that portion of the site, it currently falls outside of that airport runway flight path, and we felt that it was more critical to have the public safety facilities in those locations and not use that for the dog or the train park. So therefore, leaving the dog park in its current location became our best avenue, as well as for funding concerns. We don't need to dismantle it and relocate it. When we were in discussions with the train parks, one of the features that was highly requested was water features and or turf and grass type areas. And of course, some of the parks individuals did not feel that we would have a lot of opportunities to basically have lots of turf. And so they felt that at least having vistas of some of the turf, which the dog park currently has, we could probably integrate both of those activities in together. And so right now we've kind of located them next to each other. We haven't fully, thought out the process of how they integrate completely, but that is right now how it's moving towards in that direction.
Okay, well, I apologize for missing the meeting Thursday night. I was out of town. I did not know you were going to present. Otherwise, I would have asked that you presented when I was there at the Centennial Committee. I had no idea you did that until an hour and a half ago. So I'm sorry I missed it.
Yes,
Madam Mayor,
City Manager.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Campbell, are you talking about the compatibility of dogs running up to kids? Because they will be separated.
Oh, yeah, I know they're separated by the fence, but generally when dogs see children running around, our envision for this train park is not only the train depot, but to have either a caboose or an engine separate where children will be climbing on it, as well as possibly a small children's train that actually goes around the track, and to
Correct.
make it very active. And my experience as a park and recreation commissioner, we have never put dog parks next to children play areas. It's not necessarily safe or healthy to do that, and that's my concern. But I'm willing to work. I mean, as Kim told me tonight, it's not a done deal. You haven't done the master plan, so I just want more conversations, please.
And Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, we will definitely continue to coordinate both with the Centennial Committee before summer break occurs to receive further input, and then also the Parks and Recreation Director as we move forward in the master planning process.
Thank you for being so responsive. Vice Mayor Bazzillo.
Oh, thank you. Just a couple questions. The staffing current is 206, staff at 2035 at 854. What were your growth projections? That's over 4 times in 25 years. That just seems aggressive to me, considering I'm not sure our revenues are going to keep pace with that, and there could be a combination mixture of maybe some contractual with employees to try to save some of that money as we kind of move forward. What were the numbers that got you from 206 to 854?
Thank you, Councilman. We were basically given a set of previous studies that were done on each one of the city's departments to analyze and do confirmations with. A lot of those previous studies incurred city growth of upwards of 13 and 14% and had numbers that were a lot larger, and of course those growth rates are not being basically sustained. So one of our tasks was to take a look at the growth rates, bring them more in line of where we think they're going forward at this moment in time, and plotting out on how that actually impacts each one of the departments. A lot of the growth that you're seeing is actually in new positions that aren't currently created, especially when you look at the police department. They actually gain additional divisions and breakdown in command structure as they move forward. I can tell you that it was brought down significantly from the previous studies that we were given and each one of the departments went through a similar type study where we basically had conversations with each department, had them look at the projected growths, and they made either corrections or changes as we moved forward.
The only reason why I ask is 4 times to me, based on the way we're seeing the revenues and whatever grow, I'm not sure you're going to have the funding source to do 4 times in 25 years, but I guess time will tell on that. The other question is on the development fees. My understanding, it's all funded with development fees, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
With the new impact fee laws as we move forward, and didn't they take out public buildings in the impact fee there, Mr. Manager?
I believe so, yes.
Is that going to create any problem as this project moves forward for any other future phases?
Mr. Madam Mayor.
Don't worry, because he's gone from a council person to a vice mayor to a mayor, and now he's back to
Yeah, that's
vice.
right. I'm never quite sure where I'm at.
It's truly acceptable if you stutter on that one, so not to worry.
Councilmember Pizzillo, obviously the funding will be very determinant on what we can and cannot do in the future. We don't know what the sources will be, but we will constantly keep track of them and keep in mind what they will be. So we will keep you posted as to what those are.
Oh, okay.
And there's always another legislature year,
Yeah,
so
I know
you
there's
never
a
know.
legislative year, but I'm kind of concerned that, and again, I know we're going to have future discussions on how this impact fee may be hurting us from a funding standpoint, but if public buildings was eliminated, at least this time, I'm just kind of thinking in different phases how this may fit in, but I appreciate, that feedback. And that's it, Madam Mayor.
Joanne, may I talk before? You haven't talked yet, though, so
I have one question.
Councilman Gelser.
This is for the city manager. Could you update us on the status of the BMX park and how long their lease goes for, and do we have obligations to move it to some other area on this site?
No, we don't have obligations to move it, Councilmember Gelser, and I believe that they have a new 5-year lease roughly. So I believe there's 5 years left on the lease.
Okay, thank you very much.
My question is, and just remind me, because I can't remember, when is the Estrella Bridge and the roadway going to be widened? Isn't that all supposed to happen, and what time frame will that be in concert with all this construction?
I honestly don't know, Madam Mayor, but we'll let you know.
I would appreciate that. The other thing my other question was, and sort of in tune with our two councilwomen, what would be the density of a park if it's a train park, it's a dog park, and it's a park where we would have picnic tables and maybe a festival? The density of people at any one time, does that make a difference in whether or not we place this in that area?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Yes, it does make a difference from the airport standpoint, but we believe that these parks will be below those thresholds.
And will we have a threshold? I mean, like in this building, in this room, we can only have so many people in here, and so would we have a
We
formal
will
threshold?
establish some kind of threshold and then keep track of that and not schedule activities there that would exceed that threshold, yes.
That's reassuring. And so we do have, I think, Councilman Osborne, you had one more question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. One other issue that, this unknown with the future SR30, that looks like a large right-of-way. And do we have a time frame on this? Do we have any idea when this is supposed to give us any indication?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Osborne, Mayor and I went down to MAG headquarters last Wednesday or Thursday with all of the other neighboring cities, Buckeye, Avondale, and so forth, and we met with the MAG staff and the ADOT staff just about this in particular. They don't have any time frame right now. I mean, we're talking 30 to 40, 50 years in the future.
And is it going to go straight through the property, or is there,
That's to be determined.
To be determined. Okay, the last thing, and I guess 30 to 40 years really makes it kind of not as big of an issue, but you mentioned something that is a big expense, and that's a parking structure. And so that word concerns me because that costs a lot of money. So I'd rather not see us having to go that route, but I guess if it's 30, 40 years, that does make a huge difference compared to saying 8 years or something. So.
Yes, it does, and it also, Councilmember Osborne, the reason the right-of-way is so big is because we don't precisely know the direction it will go. Obviously, that whole right-of-way won't be used. So some land will be left over for us to use in these facilities and these long-term plans. So quite frankly, what we have to take into account is that SR30 will be there. And we have to take into account how do we get under it in order to keep our contiguity intact. So those are the things that they are looking at from the planning standpoint.
Any other questions?
We just need
Councilwoman Campbell?
Thank you. We need to keep in mind that if they do an overpass and we're under it, we can never move anything real big unless it's a very high overpass.
Can I just suggest something? When you have a microphone like that and you're turning to look at the person you're speaking, we've had a lot of complaints, all right, so we want to correct this.
Did you hear what I said?
If you turn your head and look at him like that, the sound goes away. So let's all of us, we've got to work on this here and make this better. So if you have to, pick it up and move it, but make sure you're talking directly into the microphone. Thank you for being patient with me. Go ahead.
You're welcome. Maybe next year in the budget we can buy wireless mics for the council to have on. So,
Be my guest.
No, only we find money.
Any other questions on this subject? Thank you very much for a very complete presentation, and
Thank you, Madam Mayor and
I'm
council
sure
members.
we will be getting back to you later on if we have any questions. All right, next on the item is an update of the third quarter financial, and I believe that Larry Lang, are you doing, no, okay, so Terry
Terry
Canada, it's the next hour, okay. You're much better looking than Larry, so that's all right, Terry.
That's a plus.
So Terry, please pull your mic right up to you here.
I actually have PowerPoint copies. I know you got them in your packet. I've updated a
All right,
couple
Terry, we're
numbers.
really going to get after you
So-
this evening because you have a lighter voice, and so I'm going to be after you, so I'm just going to warn you up ahead of time. So you just speak right into that, please.
She's passing it
I am passing out an update of the PowerPoint that was in your packet.
Isn't this the same one?
on. No, it's an update. It's updated.
New and improved.
Okay, with this, I'll try and be loud, slow, but brief. This is an update of the third quarter financial report, which you've all received in your packet. It is the report that looks like this. It's about 20 pages long. This is just a brief summary of this. I'm going to go over the
This is brief.
I go.
Where's Alex?
It's Eddie.
Oh, Eddie.
Yeah. I'll give him a minute. There we
There we go, there we go.
I'm just going to cover some of the highlights from the general fund, talk a little bit about the major revenues and expenditures. It's pretty much similar format. We've done this, I believe, 2 other quarters this year. Talk a little bit about budget trends, go into the other operating funds, enterprise funds, and then attached to the report was the third quarter transfers. If there were any questions on that, we could discuss that at this time too. For once, the revenues in general fund are doing well. We're through third quarter, we're at 100%. I'm happy to say that this is the first time in 3 years that we're actually right on target with the budget. I'll talk more in detail about the major categories in a minute here. Pleasant to say that on the expenditure side, we are holding the line here, and we are at 66% over average for the first 3 quarters of the year, which ends in March. Property tax are coming in at 100%. It's right around $3.4 million. Overall, all the sales tax are at 105%. We remain stable and strong in this area. It's up to about $24 million. Urban revenue sharing, 102%. Auto lieu, 97%. State shared sales tax at 99% of budget. And even the development-related revenues are at 99%, or about $2.8 million through March for this year. So overall, the revenues are improving and doing much better. We have lowered the budgets over the years, but we're happy to say that they're coming in on budget this year. Expenditures by category, we are at 70% for payroll, and this would be through 19 of the 26 pay periods. It probably will go up a few percent for the last quarter just because of accruals and year-end accounting. And then contractual services, we are at 55% of the budget. Again, we do expect to see heavier spending in this category for the second half of the year, and also with the commodities. There are a number of payments that are delayed, such as the YMCA. We also do some reimbursements that are later in the year, and so we would expect to see these categories closer to the 80-90%. But overall, we are expecting $1 million, I think it's $1.5 million in savings in general fund. So as we move through the year, we continue to monitor all the revenues. Again, like I said, we're happy to say that they're on budget, and some are even coming in exceeding the budget. We haven't had any downfalls or significant declines in any major source of revenue. Expenditures remain steady. Like I said, the departments are holding the line, and they're doing well on that. We're buying what we need, minimizing travel, consulting services, and living within the budgets that we have. Moving ahead to the other funds for revenue for HERF, as we would expect, it's at 99%. Water and wastewater generally run a little bit slow in revenue through the third quarter. We do expect in the warmer season to see the revenues peak there. We also have a rate increase that would be effective January, so you're going to see a little heavier revenues in the second half of the year. Sanitation is coming in over budget at 111%. I think the folks out there are doing a good job to find the accounts where the people don't necessarily have our other services, and they're really seeking them out, and it's boosting the revenue. And then stadium through spring training, although not all of the receipts is at 49% of budget for revenue. Likewise, on the expenditure side, you can see here all of the other funds are coming well within the 75% that you would expect to see at this time of year. Even the stadium, like I said, recording the activity through March. We do some adjustments both on the revenue side and the expenditure side. In April, Teresa will be reconciling that, so those percentages may change for the fourth quarter. And then, again, like the budget adjustments are attached. If you had any specific questions on any particular one, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Terry. All right, questions?
I have a question.
Do you have a question?
A question.
Councilwoman Osborne?
On your financial report on page 2, and you did kind of already touch on it, maybe that's why I'm seeing this, but in revenues, it says water resources, wastewater, 980,000 to the minus, to the negative, and then 373,000 to the negative in wastewater. Is that because we haven't seen the revenues because of the warming in the next few months? Is that why we see this number, or why do we see it such a negative?
Yes, council member, there's a couple things going on. One, we will have more consumption in the upcoming months, and then also the rate increase will have been for
The rate
6 months.
increase.
We are seeing in water, the consumption is down because of the the conservation program put in place there, and it was the tiered rates, and that was the intent of that.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Is that $1 million going to close? How close do you think it's going to be, come June 30th on the water, the 980,000?
We were projecting, I think, about 200 under for this year, and then we had lowered the projections for next year too on that.
So
the
you
water
made a-
consumption is down. Jerry could tell you, how much
So
it is, but
you've
it
made
is
those
down.
adjustments come next budget year to make sure that, I guess we don't fall under that, a little more conservative on the water
We
budget.
have lowered the increase of the projections.
On the stadium, can you explain the stadium again to me? Is there more coming in? We've got, 49% of revenue on the stadium?
Yeah, this, council member, this report is through the end of March, and of course, spring training, I think it even goes into April, but Teresa does the reconciliation for that through April, and so there'll be different adjustments accounting-wise for that.
So we don't really know at this point whether we hit 100, we hit 80, we hit 85, or we won't know for another month or so?
We won't know until that reconciliation is done. I do know that spring training attendance was a little down, so we are expecting the revenues to not come in quite at budget, and the folks at the stadium are going to manage the expenditures to that side
Okay, so they'll close that gap, whatever that happens to be.
to keep within the subsidy plan.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Councilman Gelser?
Terry, on the report that, not the PowerPoint, but the other report, on page 7 and 8, towards the end of the overview and on contractual services, we talk about delayed payments. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, are we purposely running in arrears, or are we these are just delayed payments?
Councilmember, it's actually a combination of a few things. We always pay the YMCA. It's I want to say about $220,000, and we just end up paying that in the spring every year. I believe we made the payment in April. A couple of the payments to the other cities and to the county they just run behind. And the other thing that's noteworthy here is in the attorney's budget for litigation, we do have, I want to say, $300,000 will be carrying over, so we're not going to fully expend that budget.
Okay. The other question I have is basically on state shared revenues. When will the new population numbers become effective, and when will we see adjusted revenues as a result of those new population figures?
Councilmember, we did include those in the 12 budget, and if you remember, they're pretty significant, and so we would expect to see receipts in those as soon as the 12 budget starts going, so for July, August.
So what you're saying is the state basically will implement it on July 1, will implement the new population numbers? Is
They
that
are in the same fiscal year.
Okay.
So the state shared allocation will start July 1. The revenues actually come in, I think we run a month behind. We talk about
Okay.
that when we do this
But
reporting.
basically, our new numbers take effect July 1, and we start collecting on the new population number that we have instead of the old population
Yes,
number.
and we've incorporated that into the budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Pasillo?
Just one more real quick, Terry. On the budget book itself, Schedule 1, it's an interesting schedule. I was trying to follow it, but I couldn't read it because it's the size. There's a possibility to blow that up just a little bit, in that budget book. I don't know if an 8.5 by 14 when you fold it, but, I like the way you have the funds flowing all the way through. It's a little different than the typical sources and uses, but I like the way it flows. I just couldn't read it because the font on there, I don't know what the font is, whether it's 8 or whatever, but getting old eyesight, I said, there's a way you can kind of, boost that up just a tad.
That's by design.
I know it's maybe by that, but
Well,
I'd like to be
Council-
able to read it, so.
Councilmember Pizzillo, in the formal budget document is intended to be a back-to-back page, if you will, so 11 by 14 by 8
Okay.
maybe.
Okay.
And so it is intended to open up like that. This one was one-sided. So.
Okay, that'd be easier to read. And just another quick one, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but in Department 1910, there was what we call the non-departmental for fiscal year 11-12, went from 1.5 to 2.8 in Department 1910. Do you know what that particular issue is, or item is?
Do you have a page number, please? Councilmember?
Page 77, I believe.
Are you-
It's an actual budget. It's in the budget
In the
document.
big budget book.
The budget book
I
that you
believe
gave.
that is the payments, economic development payments, the sales tax reimbursements, and that type of thing that
Okay.
we're in that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what that is, so that's what that is? Okay.
Yeah, we will, in that budget, there would be probably $1 million for sales tax reimbursements. There's also, have to have
So it's going up next
reimbursements.
fiscal year then?
Correct. And there's also carryover from this year to pay out, I believe they're the job credits that haven't been applied for or posted yet,
Okay.
would be carried over too.
Terry, be sure you're talking into the microphone, please.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't quite sure what 1910 department was. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I think that if you don't mind, any council reports or current events or managers' summary will wait till the next meeting. And I'm not quite sure when we're going to begin this meeting because the people that were coming to,
What we can do, the meeting can start immediately following, so we could, you could take a short break and then reconvene up there in 5 minutes and start the meeting, and then when we get to the point where the people arrive, we can,
isn't that the beginning of the
Juggle the
meeting?
agenda.
I'll have to look, but I think that's,
well, we can just, pardon me?
The CFD?
no.
Oh, that's the
no,
second
we wanna
meeting.
do
though.
that's the
But you
second
can do
half.
the 2 or 3 business items that are on there. You can do the consent.
We can't go to the consent agenda until 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, because of the public hearing.
Probably, so we can't
But
do
we
that.
can
So
do
we're
the
sort of,
but we can do the business items.
jump to the business?
Yes. You can rearrange the agenda however you want.
No, I know that. I was checking with the city clerk on that, and she said we couldn't begin, so she's out there making a phone call. Can we just adjourn, and then we'll call this to order as soon as I have some information? How's that, Rory?
That'll
All right. I'm going to call this meeting to a close. Adjourned.
So do we have
You have a break,
5 minutes?
at least 5 minutes. You can move up to the dais, okay?
At 4:30 then. What?
What?
Doing CFP now?